Hobie? Hello? We have a little bit of a situation we wanted to run by you.
Mobius! Wow! Great to see you again!
That's what's been happening.
Wow! Time slipping.
Wait, you know that?
Yeah.
You've seen that?
Yeah.
Can you fix that?
No. It's impossible to time slip in the TVA.
I know, but we just saw it happen.
Yeah.
I've been pulled through time between the past and the present.
Hello?
If what I saw is true, there's nothing to stand between this world and utter destruction.
Only one way to find out. Little good old-fashioned legwork. Listen, we have different styles. You're a man of action, which is fine. I take a more slow, deliberate, cerebral approach.
It's really goodbye.
It's up to us to save this place.
Is this cracked?
You're good.
Whatever we do, we're playing God.
We are gods. But how do you choose who lives and who dies?
Make the hard choice.
It's him.
You better run!
War is on its way.
Come on, you're the god of mischief.
Always have been. Always will be.
A little over the top, don't you think?
I thought it was spot on.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to a special conversation with Loki Season 2 executive producer and writer Erik Martin. My name is Eric Davis, and I am not only an uber Marvel fan, but I've also been covering the work of Marvel Studios since its inception with 2008's Iron Man. As someone who has been there for every step of the MCU's journey, both on the big screen and the small screen, I could say with all honesty that this Loki series is among the best work we've ever seen from Marvel Studios, and the second season of Loki is right up there at the top of the most engaging, riveting, entertaining, mind-bending, and, well, glorious MCU stories ever told. From its big ideas about time travel and timelines to the heartwarming and heartbreaking relationships the characters have with one another and with Loki, this series gives you everything and then some, even a little pie when you need to kill some time. And now let's talk about how it all came to be. Ladies and gentlemen, let me welcome in Season 2 executive producer and writer Erik Martin. Hello, sir.
Hello, thank you for having me.
You know, you are an Erik with a C. I am an Erik with a K. I'm not entirely sure whether you are a variant of me or if I am a variant of you, or we're just two guys named Erik, but that we meet under these circumstances feels meant to be.
I mean, together we complete like an entire Erik. We have the C and the K. I mean, that's completely discounting those Eriks with a CH. I don't even get that. So.
No, I don't get those guys either. So I want to start off with a bit of a fun question. You know, when I grew up, I imagine as you did, I was a time travel nerd and a sci-fi nerd. You know, I grew up on everything from Back to the Future to Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to Star Wars. And my mind was always going and I was always imagining these big fantastical situations that kind of pegged off of what I was watching. And so I'm curious, you know, for you, you know, what of your own childhood imagination, what of your own like dreams and stories that you concocted when you were a kid, are you able to kind of inject into a series like Loki as you're working on it?
I mean, I guess all of it, right? Like, you know, with something like this, it kind of just comes out because I've watched all those movies. I wasted my youth on movies and TV. So, but I never spent time just like, okay, I need to go through all the time travel movies and TV shows. There was never a moment of that. But like when at certain points in writing it, and certainly like looking at it, it's like, oh, okay, that's what that is, and that's where that came from, and yeah, it's kind of fun connecting the dots afterwards.
Talk about the character of Loki. What are you drawn to? Why do you think Loki is among the most popular and successful characters in the MCU?
I think it's his damage, right? He's this highly privileged person that nonetheless has this deep damage that he'll never be able to fully heal from. And I think that kind of just makes him relatable to everybody, and certainly to writers. We all have a little bit of that within us somewhere. And then, the way Tom plays him, it's just like, no, I mean, I get him so well.
Yeah, he's amazing as a guy, and he knows him inside and out too, which I think is important as an actor. You knew, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you knew there would be a season 2 while season 1 was playing out. So how much did you discuss season 2 while making season 1 so that they complemented one another?
I mean, a fair amount. Never wanted to look beyond season 1 too much, because we had to land that plane and kind of put everything into it. And I don't know, I never wanted to have a moment where it's like, ooh, let's hold this for next season. Like, no, let's just put it all out there, and then, we'll deal with that problem later on. But there were extensive conversations about, like, okay, how do we continue this on? Because when we first started it, it was always just like, nope, this is just a 1 season limited series. But as our script started trickling in, we started getting a little word of like, well, what if there was a season 2? So it was just like always percolating back there. But I just never wanted to look too far ahead.
Yeah, right on. I love the pacing of season 2. It's one of my favorite aspects of season 2, and I think it's what separates it from season 1 a bit. One of my favorite MCU movie is actually Avengers Infinity War, and I think when I think about that movie, yes, I like it because the heroes don't win at the end, but the pacing of it is just the momentum of it, and I think season 2 has that kind of frenetic pacing as well, because everything is falling apart around them. They're trying to figure it out. How much do you discuss pacing as you constructed the season? And what were some of the ways you looked to both separate it from season 1, but also expand upon what season 1 brought to the table?
Well, second part first. Actually, pace was exactly the thing I wanted to do to kind of separate it from season 1. Season 1, we had to create this world, and so I think you have to kind of take your time a little bit to establish that. Season 2, I wanted it to be pacey, exciting, and just move. Like, I wanted to start exactly where we left off and just be shot out of a cannon and just never stop. When I write something just for myself, it's usually like a very character-based drama, not as action-based as something like this. But I like to write drama like action. I like it to move. I like every scene to lean into the next thing. And we're just like, the ball gets rolling, and like, okay, the inertia takes hold, and that thing's just going to keep moving. And that's what I wanted to bring to this, was just like, okay, this is just a powerful object that is just blasting through space, and nothing is going to stop our momentum. We're just going to keep moving. Like, whenever we have a drop down scene, it's just going to lead to something that's even bigger than what was going on before. Like, we're just going to keep blasting forward. And sorry, I forgot the earliest part of that.
Yeah, no, I think you answered it when just in terms of pacing and how important it was to this season.
Yeah.
Let's jump into the episodes a little bit, because I'd love to get a little bit from you on each episode. Episode 1 is among my favorite episodes of the season, because it kind of feels like its own like movie within just a single episode. There's so much happening in there. It sets up the stakes, the new characters, introduces a lot of the elements we'll see later in the season, like the temporal loom, the time slipping, the talk of spaghettiizing, which I believe was the warning that was written on the floor of the TV. I think spaghettiizing was the word there. What was your strategy in approaching episode 1, and what were some of the key things you wanted to accomplish?
So spaghettification.
Spaghettification. There it is. I was trying to pause my screen, but the Disney Plus doesn't allow you to like See
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. So we had a lot on our plate for episode one. I knew we were going to have some of these like expositional. Here's how our like pseudoscience works in this, and inform the audience on that. But I didn't want to ever have to stop down too much for that. I wanted like, okay, let's wrap this in fun and adventure. Like when we get into the scene where we meet OB and Loki's talking to him from one time while Mobius is having a conversation with him from another time, it's like, okay, cool. This is how we're going to understand time and time travel and a lot of the stuff that like the journey that we're going to go on in this episode. That's what this conversation is. It's going to be expositional, but here's how it's going to be fun and weird. You just have to do some of that stuff. I'm actually a little bit fine with moving ahead and like not explaining every little thing, but it is for such a broad audience, we're kind of required to like, okay, we have to explain everything. So I knew I was going to have to do some of that, but I always wanted it to be fun or exciting when we're doing that. But yeah, definitely there was a lot of table setting, but more than anything, I wanted to root it all in just human emotion. For me, epic filmmaking it's not engaging unless I'm just like, I'm right here with the characters. I want it to be experiential in that way. Because I don't know, all I'm really interested in is the human emotion and the adventure that humans are going through in life. So I never wanted to get far away from that. And in fact, I wanted that to actually be the driver of everything. Loki showing up and it's just like, oh my God, my mind was just blown by everything that happened at the end of season one. And so he's coming in hot. Meanwhile, everyone else, it's just like, oh, the ground is literally changing underneath us. It's shaking. Our world is changing. So it's like, have to juggle all of these things. And it's just like, okay, well, we're just going to have to do this with a kinetic pace and just keep moving.
Yeah. I think I feel like it's rare too with a time travel story or a story that has time travel elements that you get something new that's brought to the table. I feel like time slipping was something brand new that this story introduced that I had never really seen before in a time travel story. So, I mean, where did that come from? I'm just curious, how did it originate and where did it get its name? What's the origin story behind time slipping?
Come on. They'll have a look at you.
Where's that? We need to be back in there.
Oh, come on.
Mobius, I know you're trying to help me, but we should be dealing with a bigger problem here. He who remains.
I understand, and we'll get to that. In order to do that, I need a Loki who remains. We need to address the fact that you keep disappearing.
Well, I keep disappearing. We don't have time.
You just disappeared.
I know.
And I can't keep looking at it because it's horrible.
What? I thought you said it didn't look that bad.
I was lying. It's terrible. It looks like you're being born or dying or both at the same time. It's freaking me out.
It's okay. It's okay.
really
Look,
painful.
it's not that bad. I can handle it.
How does it look?
Yeah, I mean, the name was just, I needed to create a name for this. Like, it really was just, and maybe I should spend more time on it, but stuff like that, I just kind of like, oh, okay, I just need to have a basic term for this, come up with that. Maybe I'll plus it later, or maybe it just sticks. That was one that stuck. And really that was just to get us off on our journey into, because the time slipping obviously is going to be such a major thing across the season and particularly at the end. And so that was born out of the basic pitch for the season. Let's take Loki from a lowercase g god to a capital G god. And how are we going to do that? How are we going to evolve his skill set, but also his wisdom and understanding of the nature of things? And that's kind of how time slipping was born, where it's like, okay, at first, this is a deep encumbrance. It seems like something is going wrong, only to realize late in the story that that's going to be like, oh, if I can control this, I can become extremely powerful and I can maybe change what is not changeable. I can alter history and I can alter the world around me. So that's how that was born, and to connect everything from season one into the end of season two in that neat way. and then I wasn't setting out to like create something new, and I'm sure it's been done before. I think if you look at like Slaughterhouse-5, it's kind of similar in that way. Like he's bouncing around through time and space. It's just a little bit different here, and ultimately, like Loki's able to like weaponize it and use it. And as I got into it, it became kind of an interesting thought exercise of like, well, we all have those ideas like, well, if I could go back in time, what would I change? What would I do? If I could change my surroundings, if I could just like, he just becomes basically a human temp pad.
Yeah.
What would I do? So I just approached it from that way. Like ultimately he's going to get that opportunity, but it's never going to be as easy as you might hope it would be.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'd love to hear a little bit on Obi. Obi feels like a character we haven't met in the MCU yet. Kind of like reminded me of like the Q of the TVA in some ways. What was the inspiration behind the Obi character?
I felt like we needed to see more of the TVA. I wanted to meet some of the other people, and I feel like season one we kind of just see a few floors of it, and I started thinking about like, okay, well, who are the people way down below? Like that last button on the elevator, who's down there? And like that was just a thought in my head as, kind of getting into writing things. And then there started to be the utility of somebody that can like explain this world. And that was also back there. But as we started like honing in on how the loom was going to work for us and what that was going to mean for the season, it was like, okay, well, what if that person is the person that kind of like runs all that stuff down there, but he does it alone? Like it's just him, and he's this guy that just loves his work.
Oh, hey, welcome to RNA.
Good. We're in the right place. We have a little bit of a situation we wanted to run by you.
Mobius. Wow, great to see you again.
Good to see you too. Yeah, Loki, I want to introduce you to.
I'm Ouroboros. Nice to meet you, Loki.
Ouroboros.
Ouroboros.
But he calls me Obi.
Yeah, I call him Obi. That's like a nickname I have, yeah.
Wow. How long has it been?
How long has it been? Could it be 3 or 4?
400 years.
What? Feels like 1,000, right?
Yeah. Remember, you got off on the wrong floor and I told you it was the wrong floor?
Wait, that's right. Yes, because then I stayed for a little bit. He took me
No,
over.
you left immediately.
Well, I'm back.
Yes, you are.
And he's so busy that like he's happy doing his stuff. He's a little tinkerer. It reminds me of a few people I've known, kind of that engineering mindset of just like, oh, they're in their projects. When they're in their projects, like there's nothing around. Put your hat up. It's like, oh, I've been working on this for like 18 hours. And that just like OB just started to form from all of that. And I don't know, I found him really endearing as I got into writing him.
Episode 2, TVA Guidebook plays a big role in season 2. Do you have a version of this for the show with all its rules? Like, what does your TVA Guidebook look like?
About like the rules of our time travel
is there like a book? Is there like a guidebook for like the rules of the show and all the timelines and?
Yeah. So we altered it a little bit for season 2 because it felt like we needed. That's just how it was going to have to work. So for season 1, basically time just stands still at the TVA. People don't age. Mobius looks the same now as he did 1,000 years ago when he was brought into the TVA. And because of that, it would be impossible to time travel in the TVA. And so when Loki starts time slipping, okay, well, now we're changing the rules. This is something different. But what had to be laid down in stone there was that it's like it had to be specific to Loki, because this is something between him and He Who Remains, and he and himself. And so nobody else is going to be able to do that. We're not changing the rules of season 1 for season 2 for anyone else. and then the time travel, like what I never like the biggest like rule is really I just don't want to get bogged down in time travel stuff. I want it to be there to be a fun tool, but I don't want to have to spend a lot of time explaining it and building ourselves into like paradoxes. I don't want that to drive the story. I want it to be our characters and the fun and the drama of what we're doing. I always want that to be the thing.
Hello?
TVA code 1229. Fail-safe mode initiated. Thank you for your service.
Hello? Hello?
I always just looked at time travel as like it's a tool and it's fun, but as much as it's a part of the texture of our show, I never want it to be the driver of it.
Yeah. You know, the pie room scene is great. In episode 2, it reminds us the heart of this series, which is the relationship between Loki and Mobius. Their convo in this scene is like part detectives working out the details, part existential crisis in terms of becoming your true self, who you are on the timeline, remaining dedicated to your purpose, which Mobius feels is at the TVA. Talk about how their relationship evolves in season 2.
Well, as much as like in season 1, Loki has a deep relationship with Sylvie, and like that really changes who he is. I think the Mobius relationship is the one that really changes him, because I think Mobius is like his first true friend.
This has to be a joke.
Does it make you a little homesick?
It's completely inaccurate, first of all.
You don't think that looks like Odin?
It's embarrassing. It's a crass generalization. I mean, he could reduce an entire culture down to a simple diorama. It's such poverty of imagination.
Is somebody feeling a little left out that they're not up there?
No. I mean, why'd they include Balder? No one's even heard of him.
Sure they have. Balder the Brave. You know, sometimes I forget that you're one of them. You are one of them. Blows my mind.
Thor wasn't that tall.
I think Loki was always that kind of class clown kid, and he had his brother, but brother can be his brother can be his friend, but it's not the same thing as having a buddy. And I think that's what Mobius is. Mobius is his buddy. And so coming into season 2, we really wanted to just spend more time with the two of them. We actually didn't spend that much time with just Loki and Mobius in season 1. So we definitely just wanted that. Just selfishly, I love Tom and Owen's scenes. They have such a great chemistry, and it's so fun to write for the two of them. So that was always there, just that there's no dramatic bearing there. I just enjoy them together. But Mobius is somebody that Loki can actually be a little naked with. He can actually speak about his emotions and go into places that are a little bit harder for him to access with other people, because one, Mobius is a Loki expert. There's nothing he's going to tell him that he doesn't already know. But I think he knows he can trust him. But then on the other side of that, as I was getting into those scenes, I kind of realized, like, well, I think Mobius is actually probably the more guarded of the two of them, actually, because like Loki, he has this whole enlightenment in season 1. And as much as Mobius like tries to be this rascal of the TVA, I don't follow the rules, like he's kind of a company man, and he kind of does, and he holds things a little bit tight. He has his way of doing things. So that episode 2 became about like challenging that character and like, oh, okay, your world is changing around you. We know you like the TVA, but what about outside of that? Don't you want to know where your life is? And for somebody who really loves his life and his work, like, there's a frightening thing to challenge that. And like, well, what if I see something out there and that changes how I feel about this? I might lose this. So I don't know. That was just an interesting thing for me to explore. It's like a small little character thing, but I think those are kind of the funnest things to get into.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, and you do a little bit of that too with the Brad X5 character, because they
Yeah.
find him on the timeline, living
Yeah.
a life, and that you begin to set not only do you begin to set up that, like, what does they do their lives on the timeline actually look like. We're going to start with Brad and X5, but there's also a lot of like, you're the hero, no, you're the villain. You're starting to set up purpose too, like who is Loki actually. And this is really the first where he's being told, no, you're either the hero or the villain, or who do you think you are in this story. And so there's some interesting things going on there. I mean, if you could talk for a second about Brad X5, that who's a new character this season too, and what his purpose is in this season.
Yeah. So Brad, let me just call out Rafa in that, Rafael Casal. He did a great job as Brad. He really showed up to play. He understood the assignment. Yeah, so Brad was like, okay, we have to have some wish fulfillment here. Like, if people at the TVA find out that they had lives on the timeline, well, that's going to blow people's minds. And we can see that broadly, or we can see that very specifically. I want to see that through one character and what they would do. And so Brad is this kind of like true believer in the TVA. He's this foot soldier. He's been battle hardened out there. But when he finds out, oh, whoa, I came from the timeline, well, that kind of shatters that. And while he's on board for this mission with General Dox, he went down there and saw that he had a life, and he had a pretty cool life. So he left his mission and went to go live that life. And it's the opposite of Mobius in that way, where, okay, this is the person that had the guts to go check it out. Even though he fit in with what he was doing at the TVA, he still wanted to see what that other thing was. So we wanted to have the two sides of the coin with those characters, with Mobius and Brad. And that's why like Mobius and Brad are so at each other. And Mobius is the one that kind of flips the script and can't keep his composure with Brad, because Brad gets it exactly the thing that's bugging Mobius about himself.
Yeah, that's true. Great point. Episode 3, we're in 1893. We meet Victor Timely. Renslayer and Miss Minutes return in this episode. You create a show that has time travel elements. I guess you can go anywhere. So, I mean, if you could just talk about why 1893, why the 1800s for this, and just Victor Timely being that variant that you wanted to kind of wrap a story around, and then also Renslayer and Miss Minutes and what they're looking to achieve here that maybe is different from what Loki and Mobius are want to achieve.
Yeah, so the time period came because, well, first I wanted to use the Victor Timely character. It was somebody we had talked about in season 1, that because we were never going to use Chang specifically, but we wanted to use like some of the variants, and so we talked about them. And Victor Timely was one from the comics. He just had a kind of a silly storyline in those, but we thought it was kind of funny, like the name we always laughed at because it's like Victor Timely, like, oh, he's a time traveler, I guess. But how do you play with that? And like, okay, who would be somebody that would actually call themselves Victor Timely? Well, somebody that's a bit of a showman. And it just kind of was like, okay, well, where would this person live? What would be the world that they would exist in? I had written a scene in season 1 for Victor Timely that took place at like a Southern revival, and he was the person up on the stage preaching, and that felt very like maybe Depression era, but possibly like late 1800s. So that was kind of already in my head as I was getting into season 2, because we ended up not shooting that scene. It was going to be Renslayer going there and seeing him. And so that was always a part of it. And I kind of took a version of that to put into season 1. But when I really started thinking about location and texture and feel, like what I wanted it to be like, I 1890 Chicago just started to feel right. It was like, okay, the World's Fair, and it's such an interesting time period where you still have horses and buggies in the streets, but now you have electric lights.
Yeah.
And it was just such a turn in technology. It's like, okay, somebody that has some advanced knowledge, this is a great place for them to exist. And I just love the aesthetic of old world, new world at the same time. It just kind of fell in love with that. And then talking with Casper Farahani, our production designer, who I brought into the room for season 2, we just started talking about like, okay, what can be these settings? What's this world? And having a lot of those conversations. And it just kind of snowballed and just made sense in that way. And then with Miss Minutes and Renslayer, first I wanted to use Miss Minutes as a real character. If we're going to have some entity there, if we're going to have a character on screen, I need to like understand them emotionally. I have to like, okay, like they have to have a point of view. They have to have an emotional drive. Otherwise, why have them on the screen? So I had a great time actually like, okay, well, what was her creation? I built the whole backstory of her and He Who Remains at the end of time, and her basically being his only counterpart there, and the intimacy of a relationship like that. And like, well, okay, yeah, like I can see this going to kind of weird places where this AI he created to just play chess with him, that he couldn't help but tinker with and make more and more complex, that suddenly became her own person. Well, of course she would have intimate feelings toward her creator in that way. So I had to go there, and amazingly Marvel let me. And then, Renslayer, she's a person with these delusions of grandeur and sees herself above the fray. It made sense that like she would be the one that Miss Minutes would go to manipulate to try to help her get to Victor Timely and everything.
Yeah. Moving along, episode 4 is a banger. I mean, that was the way that ends is probably maybe the best cliffhanger of the season. And I would just like to know about, ending episodes, and like, how do you decide where an episode ends, where it's just at a point where it ends the episode in a way that makes sense for the story of that episode, but it also leaves you really wanting more. And I just be interested to hear your strategy on crafting the perfect ending of an episode, because I think episode 4 has one.
Yeah. Oh, great. Thank you. Every episode has a question, right? I want episodes to be contained and to answer that question, but always that the answer to that question starts a new question. And that question should be bigger than the one we were asking before, something that has us leaning forward. I never want to tie things up in such a neat bow that, well, why do I have to show up next week? Like, you have to have a new dramatic question that, is going to make everything else like come into question. So when I'm sitting down to kind of craft the episode from front to back, you come in, all right, what is the question of this episode? What do they need to do? What is their plot motivation, and what are their emotional motivations? Episode 4, look, they have to save the TVA. Loki is doing this because if that loom melts down, the entire TVA is destroyed. Okay, that's bad because the TVA is the only thing that stands between Kang and taking over, and him taking over the timelines. But what's in my head is, well, no, Loki's doing this for that reason, but he's doing this because he finally found a home. He is a person that always felt like an extra part. And now in the TVA, well, this island of misfit toys, well, he fits right in. He's doing this for selfish reasons. He wants to save his home. He wants to save his people. This is a found family story. Everything is about saving these people. And so you get to the end of that. This isn't the end of our series, so this is just the end of our episode. Okay, so that one thing that he's trying to do, he fails at. So how is he going to succeed going forward? I'm never consciously using like the Conrad hero's journey like roadmap, but stories just lay out this way, and that's essentially where we are. This is the crisis point. He faced off with the thing, and he failed because he hasn't gone through his emotional journey where he needs to properly be able to defeat that, which he's facing off with.
Yes. There's also a let's go to episode 5. There's some moments where, I love Sylvie tells Loki that we're writing our own stories, to go write yours. There's also a scene where I believe it's episode 4 where him and Sylvie are sitting in the pie room. I love your pie room conversations. They're really, really great. But I would love to just talk a little bit about Loki and Sylvie relationship. I think one thing that this show does so strong is it isn't just one relationship that you're invested in. You're invested in all these relationships that Loki has, whether it's Mobius or Obi. And Sylvie, I think, is another relationship from season 1 that evolves in season 2. So if you could just talk for a moment about that relationship in season 2 and how you wanted it to evolve.
I think we all have those people in our lives, and it's such an important thing in life to find them. But the people that will call us on our own bullshit, that is Sylvie. She's the other side of that kind of Mobius friendship, the intimacy there, where I think Mobius can be a little straightforward with Loki on stuff, but he's kind of a sweetie pie. He's ultimately going to be nice about it. Sylvie's just going to lay it right out there. She's not interested in making it palatable. She's just going to tell Loki how it is. And that's important for him to hear in this moment. Yeah, that's great. You have this mission. You're doing that thing. Why are you really doing it? Seriously, dig into yourself. Why are you actually doing it? It's funny. I think storytelling, the way we've formed it, I think you can go back, Western storytelling. It probably gets a lot of its form from the Bible and those stories, but I think it also comes from human psychology, where if you have an issue in your life, you're trying to figure it out. We always come at it from one direction, but you need to figure out what actually is behind all of that to get there, and that really is the how you follow any character's journey. They think this is what's going on, only they have to go through all this stuff to finally realize, oh, this is why I'm actually doing it. And Sylvie calls it out, he's trying to write this story for everyone else. Well, that's fine, but free will means everybody gets to decide for themselves now. And so that's kind of the balance of all of this. How is Loki going to save everybody, but also give them the opportunity for free will? Is he going to be able to have what he wants for himself? Or, and this is the dramatic question going into episode 6, can he have it all? Can he have what he wants while also giving everyone else free will?
Yeah. Well, I mean, then let's talk about episode 6. I talk about the perfect first episode. What are your rules in terms of crafting a final episode? What do you feel like are the biggest things that you set out to achieve?
We have to be true to everything we've set up before this. In Marvel, I think you have to have big ideas to sell the concepts of episodes. And I'm very interested in just following a character journey. That's the big idea to me. But we had to have a concept for this of okay, what is this that I'm going to be able to pitch to Kevin Feige that he can latch on to be oh, that's what this episode is. And it's okay, well, no, this is when time slipping comes back in the biggest way. And essentially, this is our Run Lola Run kind of Slaughterhouse 5. Loki is going back and living through these same moments. You can pitch that out. It's oh, great. Everyone understands what that means. And that gave me a lot of freedom to chase the weirdness of it because we had such a strong concept. It's great. Everybody gets that. I can go and make this as fun and weird as possible and have some of those moments where it's okay, yeah, we cut ahead many, many centuries later, and Loki has been through this millions of times. But what I also wanted to do with that is, yes, we're going to have fun. This is going to be a fun ride for the audience, but that time is what it's going to take for Loki to literally become that capital G god. He's going to master everything. And it was all about getting back into that room with He Who Remains, and that moment when you realize, oh, He Who Remains is behind all of this. And that was the big thing, coming to that moment. And like, oh, wow, okay, that was the mind blower. If we get to that, that's going to shock everyone that we're all the way back there. And this is what this season is about. It's Loki still fighting that battle of being in that room.
Yeah. And then he has to ultimately discover that in order to, really have everything, he has to sacrifice himself in a way to become that. I love the line, purpose is more burden than glory. What does that line mean to the series and to this character of Loki?
Well, I think that's just reality, right? Like, the hero takes great damage to achieve the thing for everyone else. And that idea of sacrifice is a good one to renew in the zeitgeist from time to time. Sacrifice is what moves things ahead, but someone has to lose in that, right? Someone's going to have to take that damage for everyone else to be safe. And so, that was really like the theme that held it all together. Like in season 1, we're talking about that he's burdened with glorious purpose, and it's such a narcissistic thing. But he finally understands what glorious purpose really means in terms of burden. It's his burden. If you truly want glorious purpose, you have to take the burden on yourself.
Yeah. He realizes that he finally sits atop his throne. What do you refer to him as? Is it the god of time, the god of stories? Like what this now where we end up with Loki at the end of season 2, what do you think he is and how do you refer to him?
I just refer to him as God Loki.
God.
I think, we have echoes of God of Stories, and there are like mentions of that, but we never really do that exactly. But in a way, he's just kind of holding everything together and allowing everyone else to live their stories. He's not dictating them, he's holding them together and allowing people to have that free will. We talked about Atlas and Sisyphus in the room, and that idea of burden. I don't believe this is a punishment for Loki. I think this is a choice, and it's a burden he takes on, maybe not gladly, but willingly. He had to give up that family that's all he wanted, but for them to actually have what they want, he has to give up what he wants. And I didn't want to like say anything on too grand of a level, but I wanted it to have that kind of fable feel to it, that mythological feel of sometimes truly to get what you want, you kind of have to give up another thing you want.
Yeah, great way to put it. As we wrap up, I just want to do a couple of quicker questions with you. Favorite episode?
I think the finale. I love what we were able to put together there, and Tom is just so great. And I think 5 and 6 for sure, but 6 probably has my heart.
Do you have a favorite scene to write?
Like kind of scene or a specific one?
Yeah, like a scene. Well, if you have a specific scene that was your favorite that you just had a good time into, or kind of scene, however you want to answer it.
Episode 1 when we meet OB and we're having that conversation between time, because I think it's so much fun, and that's basically that just came out of the ether onto the page. Its first draft is what ended up getting all the way through. Like basically nothing changed in that. That was just a gift from God Loki.
Which character do you relate to personally? I'm going to guess that it's Obi because you are a tinkerer and you like, so I'm going to guess it's Obi, but which character do you relate to personally?
There's definitely some OB. I love to just get in and tinker on something. There's a lot of Mobius too, actually. Yeah, I think like my heart says Mobius, my head says OB.
You like to ride jet skis? You're a jet ski
You
fan?
know what? I like to have fun. You know what? I like to do my work, but I also like to, have fun with it. And there's just a nice life to that character of Mobius.
Without a doubt. The trickiest nut to crack on season 2. Like, what was the hardest thing for you to figure out?
I think it's everything with the loom and keeping that from there being too much like pseudoscience gobbledygook. Like I needed that. That needs to be a driver of this. It needed to be the MacGuffin for our season, but I just didn't want that to take over everything. So it's just like, okay, getting just enough of that, but not too much. And that was just a continual thing, just weighing all of that.
Yeah. And this will be my last question. We don't often talk about the things that we're most proud of when they are completed. So I would ask you, what are you most proud of when it comes to your work on Loki season 2?
I don't know. It's hard for me to be proud of things I do. I guess I would just be proud. I'm proud of how many people have like been able to find something meaningful in this and really enjoy it and connect with our series. It's something that never gets old when people say they really enjoy it and they can tell you about their favorite parts. And it's such a privilege to be able to speak to so many different people with our work. And yeah, I'm just grateful for it. Probably more grateful than proud of it, but yeah, that's the best I can do.
Yeah, well, sir, it was a privilege to speak with you today. Congratulations on all of your work on Loki. I personally love the show to death. And good luck with it.
Well, thank you so much, Eric. Yeah, happy to be here.